There was somebody asking for money, you know. I went downstairs and met this wonderful gentleman. The fact that for $6,000, for goodness sake, we could provide a school for 400 children.
Fred Hyde in Australia is a man who dresses in suits, always looks immaculate, and he is a pure gentleman.
Fred is so amazing because he is so humble, he is so simple in the way he lives and goes about what he does, but what he does is just so amazing.
He's, for me, one of the last of the old bushies who can turn his hand to anything.
I find Fred to be a very down-to-earth person, a very humble person, somebody who doesn't want to talk about himself, who doesn't see himself as doing this wonderful work.
I'm not an extraordinary person. I'm just a very ordinary person. I never even claim to be a very charitable person. I'm a person who, if he sees the need for a thing, will try to do something about it.
I first met Fred in 1993 when I was the headmaster of St Leonard's College down there in Melbourne. And I remember feeling vaguely annoyed because I had so much on my plate and there was somebody asking for money, you know. I went downstairs and met this lovely gentleman, and that's quite the right word to use with Fred, this wonderful gentleman who seemed to be without guile and who in a no-nonsense sort of manner said, listen, I'm building orphanages and I'm building schools in Bangladesh. Is this a sort of project which you and your school would be interested in?
My first contact actually with the Indian subcontinent was during the war. And we were one night in Jerusalem, down in an area where we shouldn't have been, and we were attacked by a group of Arabs. And some Indian soldiers came along, they saw our predicament, and they took off their webbing belts, which just have nice big heavy brass knuckles on them, and they attacked the Arabs from behind. So they got us out of our troubles very smartly, and we were quite grateful for that, and we spent the rest of the evening in their company. Then when I retired, I went there intending to stay for a few months, and I was approached to go over and take over this farm on Balmore Island. I promised to give them 1 year, and then I intended to go back to India again. But the 1 year has turned into 21 years. Balmore Island is the last island in the Ganges Delta. The living standards are very, very poor. It's sort of the end of the line. It's the most remote area of Bangladesh.
Fred's a really humble man, and he chooses to live the way the Bangladeshis live. The toilet is probably the thing that really sticks out in your mind, because all it is a hole in the concrete slab. That's all the toilet is, and to have a shower, you have to go and physically get the water in buckets from the pump, bring it back into the house, and tip that over yourself. Fred does this, tips it over himself while he's standing over the toilet.
Coming back to Australia, the one thing that strikes you, the amount of room and the privacy you have here. They talk about cultural shock when you go overseas. I suffer a greater cultural shock as a rule when I come back here, because I get letters over there very often telling me how hard and how bad things are here. And I come back to this land, which is quite amazing to me after being over there, and the cultural shock is really great.
When my father died, he felt it his duty to come back and look after and live with my mother, which he did. And he started a workshop under there, repairing all sorts of engines. And from there, he built up a business that was recognised practically all over southern Queensland.
So what he learned, what he experienced in Queensland, and he's doing exactly the same in Bangladesh. So he would never do anything on bowler that involved just his skill. He would direct as the engineer, I suppose, but involve as many people as he could so that people are all the time learning skill.
He's really the educational equivalent of Fred Hollows, isn't he, really? You know, he brings another sort of sight to the people. He brings them education, and I think that's marvellous. We have to build this school in the dry season, I presume. Is that right?
We've done.
We have to build the school in the dry season?
Certainly, yes.
Every year Fred Hyde comes back to the schools. He tells them how their particular school is progressing, what the enrolments are, how the teachers are faring, and so on and so on, and deals with all the questions from staff and students about their school.
This was the couple that didn't have children. Is that right?
This is the couple.
These schools, of course, very generously give their time and raise money to support the schools that they've built. So it's been an ongoing commitment, not just only building the school, but then supporting it over the years. But it strikes me as extraordinarily ironic, the contrast between that sort of affluence and the tin sheds and the earth floors of Fred Hyde schools. The differences are quite incredible.
But the brilliant thing that I enjoyed about it was that the kids they run to school and they just love to be there. They really do know that they're lucky to have a school. They don't take it for granted.
One of the great feelings I get when I walk into a school and see these children, little mites, being taught to read and write, the first of their family to ever do so. I think, well, you know, yes, it is worth coming to Belmore Island.